All right, so I'm here with my grandma, and I'm gonna be interviewing her for the video. So, okay, so, first, when were you born? Like, what was your date of birth?
July 19th.
Okay. All right. So, who were some civil rights movement leaders that you remember hearing about?
Well, first of all, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks,
Okay.
Medgar Evers, and I was only 13 years old when the biggest march happened in Washington for jobs in. It was the largest protest and the most famous protest in U.S. history.
Okay. What do you remember? What do you remember about that protest? Like, how was it? Was it like a peaceful protest? Was it like bad? Like, what do you remember about it?
It was peaceful compared to what goes on now.
Yeah.
People worry about it because up until that point, we really hadn't had that kind of protest.
Yeah.
And that was where he gave I Have a Dream, his I Have a Dream speech.
Okay.
So remembered.
Okay. And then, like, do you think the marches and, like, the protests and all that stuff, like, helped or hurt the movement?
The way I thought it helped because a lot of people weren't aware of how these people were suffering, and it kind of brought awareness. We didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
All we had was news.
Okay.
Some days, all days, it was you had news at 5 and then 10 o'clock, and that's all you saw. The rest of it, everything was closed off to us pretty much.
Yeah. All right. So, like, there were, like, so you know how there were, like, a number of assassinations, like, the 1950s and the 1960s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you remember hearing about them? And, like, where were you when you found out? Like, the John Kennedy one, the Robert Kennedy one, like, Martin Luther King, like that.
Never forget JFK. I was in 8th grade, and it was the last hour of school that day. And it was mayhem. I mean, we were only in 8th grade, but everybody was crying, and it was chaos.
Okay. And then, like, do you remember, like, the segregated neighborhoods and schools? Like, were you, like, around for that time?
That was a little bit before. We were a little bit mixed.
Okay.
And, I mean, truthfully, we had, like, we were an all-white school with, like, 4 black students.
Okay.
And there was no big deal about it. We were all great friends.
Okay. Okay, and then, so now we're gonna talk about, like, the social changes. So, like, what decade were you a teenager in?
The 60s.
The 60s? Okay, and, like, what did you and your friends do for fun?
Drive-ins, like McDonald's.
Yeah.
School dances.
Okay.
Football games, basketball games.
Okay, so a lot of the same stuff, like now today.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, and then, how old were you when you got your first job, and, like, what was it?
Oh, boy. My first job. I think I worked at a Dairy Queen, and I was, like, 16.
Okay. All right, and then what was your favorite type of music, and who were your favorite music artists?
The Beatles,
Okay.
the Stones, oh boy, Janis Joplin.
Okay. Did you ever go to any concerts?
Yeah, when I was 16, I went to my first concert. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, like, did you have any actors that you enjoyed watching on TV or, like, at the movies? And, like, what were the movies and shows that you enjoyed?
Oh, the movies back then. I remember The Breakfast Club. It was all the teen movies. Oh, God, what were some of them? The Breakfast Club is the one that sticks out in my mind. But movie stars, oh, gosh. That's a tough one. And that should be an easy one.
It's all right if you don't remember. It was a long
Tom
time ago.
Selleck.
Okay. Okay. And then let me go down. So like, did you have were you working like during the Vietnam War?
No, I wasn't. I was not. I was at
Okay.
home taking care of the kids.
Okay. Like what was your what was your main activity you were doing during the war?
Main activity?
Yeah.
At that point in time, I was a housewife and a mom.
Okay. Yeah, that was common back then.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Like how'd you feel about the war and like what were your worries? What was like the worries and like the family and stuff?
We had a few family members that were in the Vietnam War, but a lot of friends. And because there was no internet and there was no cell phones, there was no nothing,
Yeah.
you could not get in touch with them except by letter.
Okay.
And that would take forever. So the lack of communication, it was the scariest time because you didn't know where your loved ones were, what they were doing, or if they were okay.
Yeah. Okay. And like who'd you live with during the war? Like I'm guessing you live with like mom, like Uncle Brandon, like stuff like that.
Yeah, they were little. Well, I was in high school when the war started, and the war was so long that in those years, eventually I was married and had kids, and the war was still going on.
Yeah. Okay. Um, like what were weddings like during like the war?
The weddings, simple. Nothing like today. I mean, the white dress and the tuxedo, but it was a lot simpler and a lot smaller.
Okay. Were you worried that like that our side like wouldn't win the war?
Wouldn't win the war?
Yeah.
We didn't win the war.
I know that's a question though in here. Like, did you worry that our side might not win?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just, as the public, the only time we got to find out anything is when the president came on the television and spoke, or if we saw snippets in black and white on the news, like at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That's all we basically knew, unless someone we knew got killed.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, it was very scary.
Yeah. And then, so like, how'd you feel like when the war ended? It's like this is like post-war now, like when the war's done.
Relieved.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then our poor guys came back and they didn't get the treatment they should have gotten after Vietnam.
What'd you do when you heard the news from like the war was ended?
Oh, it was joyous. I mean, everybody was just so happy. It was such relief after such a long war with so much loss of life.
Yeah.
Of young boys.
Is there like any thoughts about like the wartime experience that you want to share with like future generations?
You know, being in the States and feeling safe.
Yeah.
It was happening, but it was so far away. Like I said, we didn't see much of it. So it was a constant worry, but it wasn't like it is today where it's constant on CNN. It wasn't the same.
Yeah. Okay, so how would you describe the ways that the war changed your life and others?
Changed my life. Well, the poor kids that went over and fought the war were good friends, and it changed them forever. I mean, some of them never were the same.
Yeah.
Some of them got addicted to the drugs over there. Some of them, they saw things that they would never get over. And some of them, it just ruined their life.
Okay, and like here's where this comes in. Like, do you think like medical care like changed because of the war?
Medical care changed because of the war. what did happen in like the 80s is it became where if you got a good enough job, finally benefits were coming to fruition.
Yeah.
You know, they were offering benefits, which they hadn't before.
Okay. All right. So I think that's about it for this interview. I learned like a lot more about like how the war was and like how life was back then. It's like a lot different than today. Like, we take it for granted.
Yeah, we do, but there's wars going on.
I know, but
Yeah.
it's a lot different now today though. With like, you know,
Yeah,
we
the
know what's
internet,
constantly going
the
on,
news.
like stuff like that.
That's right. All right.
All right. Well, that's it for the interview, and then.
All right.